Welcome back to Legacy Builders, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for joining us on our parenting series. We're super excited to get in today and talk about the age groups like 4 through 8 / like grade school ages. So anywhere from like preschool to 6th grade is what we're talking about. Last time we talked a little bit about newborns to 3 years old. And so now we're going to get into the next age group. Anything else you want to say, Dad, before we jump right in?
No, just say, hey, everybody, thanks for joining us. Glad you continue to tune in, and we trust that this is going to be another fun episode and you're going to learn lots of information today. So thanks for tuning in. I love this age group. Personally, it was a fun age to raise kids, and just we loved it. And so
Good.
looking forward to talking about this age group.
I hope every age group hasn't been too bad.
No, it just gets better. I don't know. I think when you're excited to to raise kids and be a parent thing, I mean, every age group is fun. For me, it's been fun. But I just like this age group, they're just so curious and just want to explore, and you're just starting to identify who they are, who they're starting to become, and it's a lot of fun.
So what's the biggest differences entering into this age group? Like once you kind of hit older threes, like 4, like what changes?
Well, again, they're starting to take on their own personality. They're starting to kind of be interested in their own things, and that you can start to see the uniqueness of them, and that you identify their strengths, their weaknesses. It's a really fun age. You kind of get past, well, hopefully most people get past the the initial discipline part of raising the kids, like we talked about in last episode. 2-3 years old. I mean, for me, those were the ages that we really had to establish those boundaries and those rules, and if done properly, I mean, the rest of the years, I mean, yeah, there's still work to be done, but it's not as discipline intensive as it is in the first few years establishing who's the boss, as we called it in the last episode.
Mm-hmm. So what are some of the like main things you're teaching or like parenting in this season? Like what are the things you're trying to teach the kids?
Well, so my biggest foundational thing and this is for me, and again, just to kind of preface, if you didn't catch the first episode and you're just tuning into this one, we're just sharing our own experience, our own journey, things that our ideologies. So we're not, by any means are we saying that this is the best way, that we're the only way, the right way, the better way. We're just saying this is us. This is what we chose to do. And you just take it as one of the items on the buffet table. This is one person's experience in how to raise kids and thought processes. I mean, I picked up these ideas from other people. So hopefully, if we don't share our ideas can't be processed and utilized later on. So that's all this is about. We just want to share our ideas, and we're, again, by no means are saying that we're better than anybody and that we did everything right, because we didn't do everything right. This isn't about right or wrong. It's just about a process. It's about ideologies. And so for me, Jody, we decided we wanted to raise leaders. That was our foundation. We just believe that we as individuals, people, are created in God's image and likeness, whether they accept that or not, doesn't change the truth, in our opinion. And so with that said, we believe that everybody's created to be a leader. And so in our training, some of it discipline, we used as our foundation of parenting and raising our children, as we're training them to be leaders. And so that's the biggest difference now is, early on in the previous age group, we're not necessarily training them at that point to be leaders. But now in this age group, the dialogue is different. They're questioning, they're exploring, they're experimenting. They were able to start working at a small age appropriate leadership training. in different ways. And so now we're starting to create this culture, this environment where the kids can start to identify who they are, start to identify their leadership skills, and just create a safe environment for them to grow in those areas.
And I think too, one of the other really big things that changes in this season is if you choose to go to public school, your kids are now in school. I mean, they're learning different ideas and just learning things in general, seeing and experiencing other kids in their life and stuff like that, especially in those older grades. And so it's a lot of new things that are introduced to your kids in this age range, from preschool to 6th grade.
Right.
And so I think too, like, I mean, one thing I remember is we would ask the why question on like, well, why can't we do this? Or why can't I get this? Or why can't I have all these things? Or just all these kinds of questions. Like when you're 2 to 3 and your kid's asking why, it's more of a game for them. They're not like really asking why. It's a game out of like, they're just learning that curiosity thing. But I feel like when you hit these ages, like they're asking why to genuinely seek an answer. Like, and your answer was revolved around leadership.
Right.
And so you would always be like, well, I'm training you to be a leader. So that's why you can't sneak out with your friends, or that's why you can't just go and do whatever you want, because I'm training you to be a leader. And so that changes the perspective. And I think we hit on it a little bit in another episode where we talked about this why question. I think it was in our relationship series where we talked about this why question and why it's important to have an answer to that.
Yeah. And, you know, in my opinion, you know, if parents don't have an answer to the why question, you just automatically are behind. Now it's the kids are leading you, in my opinion, if you can't answer this why question. And I'm not a big fan of the answer to the why is because I said so, because I'm the parent and I said so. That may be true. You're right. You are the parent. You said so. I just think there's more that we can offer the kids as to an explanation than because I said so. And what happens is that answer and that response does not build trust. It does not build relationship with your child. Mm-hmm. And that's what's happening in this age range. They're starting to, you've established a boundary. There's a trust that's already been established, or at least for me, when we in the 2 and 3 year old range have identified who's the boss. We've identified boundaries, and we in discipline was the training ground. But now it's not. The spankings aren't, and the discipline aren't as often in this stage.
If you did the first stage,
right? If you did the first stage well,
yeah.
Okay, and the kids aren't always pushing the boundaries. They now know the boundaries. They know where the safety zone is. They know, what they can push and not push. But so now it's a matter of, we're going to now expand those boundaries. We're going to now help them to push those boundaries in safe ways. Okay, and so then they're going to be asking, they're going to experience, like Madison said, they're going to go to school, and this family doesn't do the same things as we did. Their kids get away with things that our kids don't get away with. So now they come back and are asking, well, why? Yeah. Why can't we do what Johnny's doing at school? Well, I don't know much about Johnny's parents. I don't know much about Susie's parents or whoever's, I don't know what they do. I don't know what their background is. I don't know what their foundation is. All I know is this is what we're training you to be leaders. I don't know what they're training them to be.
Right.
And so we have leadership discussion. And leaders don't do everything that's popular all the time. They're not trying to fit in all the time. They're not trying to be like Johnny and be followers. I'm trying to teach you there's a reason. Yeah, I hope you experience differences. Madison, I hope you see this. I'm trying to train you that you now get to help make a choice as to what you want. I don't want you to want something because Susie has it. I want you to want something. Tell me why you want it. You want it just because I said no. See, now the problem is never the problem. So now I'm going to introduce that concept in this age group, because the problem is never the problem in life. In many instances, I teach Madison, I teach my kids that all the time.
Yeah.
Many
We did
people.
A whole thing on this in
Yeah,
relationships.
in relationships, the problem is never really the problem. So the problem isn't that they want this or they want that. It's deeper. It's deeper than that. And so I want to help them understand, well, why do you want it? And well, I just want it because you said I can't have it. So see, now that's what the problem is. So now it's the boundary issue again. And so are we still building trust? Are we still training them to be leaders?
Well, I think another thing, just on the because I said so note, like when you don't say just because I said so, and you actually give an answer and actually start getting into this discussion about leadership and getting into allowing that kid to really ask you questions and be curious. It's cultivating that culture of coming to you and asking questions.
Right.
It's creating, like you said, that relationship, that's trust, which then cultivates respect for the parent ultimately. When you just say because I said so, it's now a power struggle between you and your kid every time. They're like, okay, well, they're just going to use the boss card every time. All right, cool.
Right.
Like, and so once you get into the middle school, high school ages, like that doesn't roll with them anymore.
Right.
Like that's just not okay anymore to just say because I said so.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
So yeah, we'll table that. That's a hot button for Madison.
Hot button.
So
I just think it's important for parents to understand that if you just shut down your kid at a young age, like you're just not building that relationship.
Right.
And then it's just, it doesn't create a respect and mutual respect between the two of you when you don't allow your kid to be curious and ask questions.
Right.
And I think it's such a hot button for me too, because I'm like, your kids in this age group, like as the parent, you're creating the values for this kid. You're creating the foundation, and they should be able to come to you and ask safely their questions, because schools nowadays, you're not really allowed to safely ask your questions to teachers and stuff like that. So if they can't come to you, parents, like who else are they supposed to go to learn values, to learn life lessons, and be curious with? That's why it's a hot button.
Yeah, no, it's exactly right. And the thought that came to my mind as we're talking about this, it goes back to one of my number one sayings, is that parenting is never convenient. And that's an interesting statement, because and Madison can share her thoughts on this. I'm pretty sure I know what she'll say, but I remember for a long time, she never thought that it was inconvenient. Because I never gave off the impression that when they came to me and wanted to talk and have these discussions, and we had these discussions, that it was ever inconvenient for me.
I would say until we started this podcast and kind of went down the path of parenting can be inconvenient, then I was like, oh, I guess there was some times growing up that it was probably inconvenient for you. But not to say, like you said, like you never acted that way.
Right. And it's a balance, and it's something that in Madison will appreciate this, because as she takes on parenting later in life, that she'll be like, okay, now I understand what Dad was talking about. It's not that it's an inconvenience to raise my kids. It's just never convenient. There's never convenient timing, because we're dealing with the stress of life. We could have just, got bad news on our job. We could have had a rough day at work. Sometimes, the bills aren't getting paid on time, and there's a stress of feeding the kids and making these decisions, and just all the stresses that it comes with putting a roof over your head and food on the table. There's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of stress. And then all of a sudden we get the why. Well, what about and then these questions, and we have to be able to not, like you said, shut that relationship down, but now focus and, okay, it's not about me. I'm trying to raise this leader. So I have to be a leader right now in this moment. I have to show strength because they need to see strength. They don't need me to show my weakness in all the stuff that I'm dealing with. So parenting happens at inconvenient times. We're not making light of it. We're just telling you, parents, we get it. You're experiencing parenting right now, and it's never convenient. We're just telling the truth.
Yeah, as I talk to more parents and hear more of their stories and stuff, I can see how it would be so easy to just not have the conversation, or to just
Right,
not implement the values, or to just let it slide this time. You know, like, to, if they don't want to do their homework, to just not let them do their homework, to not sit at the
right.
table and help them with it. I can see how that would be really easy.
Yeah. I mean, it's so difficult to stay consistent. It's so difficult to just be stable in your teaching, in your upbringing, and your in making sure they follow the boundaries, because they're always being pushed. They're always being tested. And so yeah, it's just difficult at this age, because I mean, again, it doesn't get any cheaper to raise the kids. And then now at this point, if you're raising, a child in the four to what,
Grade school.
grade school level right now, this kind of what we're talking about this,
Yeah.
I mean, chances are you don't just have one kid. So now chances are you've got maybe two, three, five kids, who knows? I mean, now there's multiple kids. And so now the time factor that and the attention needed and desired by each one of these kids is, they're all at different ages now. They're all different personality types. And so we had our kids, they're 4 years apart. Like Madison, when Madison was a senior in high school, we also had a sophomore in high school and a freshman in high school.
So they had them in 4 years.
Yeah.
Time. We're not 4 years apart. It's like bam, bam, bam
Yeah.
in 4 years.
And yeah. So when we're talking about we're raising, ages 4 or 5, 6 years, we have 3 kids right now at this point in time. One of them special needs that we found out. Now talk about life throwing you a curveball, right? And so, and we'll talk about that. We're going to do a whole episode just on special needs parenting.
Yeah.
So now we got all this to deal with, and making sure that the youngest isn't being neglected, because that's what happens a lot of times is the youngest now gets, doesn't get as much attention as the first and the second, especially the special needs one gets. So it's tough. We're just acknowledging, parents, that it's tough. We know it, we get it, and at the same time, your kids are looking for a security. They're looking for stability. They're looking for consistency. They're trying to figure out these life experiences as they're going to school, or some of you might be homeschooling. I think that's awesome too. That's a tough challenge in and of itself. We tried that for a year. It didn't work the way we thought it was going to work out. And so, you have a thought?
Yeah, I just think going back to that, and how, so life threw you another curveball with mom having a surgery and stuff, and we were all really young, just
Yeah.
entering into this school, like, age group and stuff like that. And so, but all the memories that I have from that time period and the season that you guys, like, while you were under so much stress, because all of the responsibilities were now on you, dad, and like, we've had conversations about it, and just some of the stressors you had to deal with in that season, taking on really everything, because mom had a brain tumor. And so, but all of the memories that I have from that season aren't of those like bad things, where it could have been this trauma that we really remembered. Um, but I just remember like us playing Barbies, or having these memory like matches or stuff like that. And so, like, as a kid, we never knew that you were going through maybe all of these stressors, or we don't remember that season being, well, not we, I can only speak for myself and Michael doesn't remember. Michael's the special needs brother. But yeah, so just like those types of things where we don't remember that. Like, I don't remember that. I just remember the softer, the more peaceful times of that's like age group. And so still the earlier age groups of like 4 to 6 or something, I don't really remember that much, but those are a couple core memories that I do remember. And so, yeah, I mean, parents, the kids either remember it being a really stressful time and you always being upset, or I remember peaceful moments.
Yeah, that's a good, thanks for sharing that. And we never know. I think later, even like we're talking about, this age group kind of establishes that relationship and that trust for the next age group that we'll be
Yeah.
talking about next time. Because now there's a comfort and a safety to be like, okay, I can come and talk to dad about stuff, and so we establish these trusts. And and even now, even at this age group, we talked about this before. We can share a little bit about this, that we're even starting to train you as we're training leaders. One of the things that I always wanted to do with my kids, and it's sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but I always like to be as prepared as I can. And I want to make sure, try to prepare my kids as best as I can for what they're about to experience. And so we start talking about things like peer pressure. And hey, you're gonna experience this stuff. You got kids that are pushing envelopes. You're in school now. We chose to send our kids to a public school, and it's just, they're just exposed to all different types of attitudes, mentalities, mindsets,
Just people.
people. I
And
mean, yeah, behaviors. Again, none right or wrong or good or bad. It's just different. And
but I think too, if you don't, like, as a family, if you haven't, like, don't have those values set in place, like you guys talked about and discussed, like, before even having kids, what those values would be, then it is just a free for all. And if Johnny comes and acts a certain way and we come and say why, it's like, well, why not? Go ahead, act like Johnny,
right.
And so, or yeah, sure, we can do this or you can do that. It's just kind of on a whim, kind of figuring out what the values are. And so keep going with your thought, but
Yeah. I mean, we believe that either we have a plan, or life, everybody else has a plan for your life. Everybody's got opinions and plans for your life. And if we don't have a plan, if we don't have a foundation and have some substance, then our kids are just tossed out into the world to try to figure out everybody else's plan for their life, how they should live, how they should believe, how they should think. um, you know we're we're providing a voice, a security. Yeah, in some ways we're cultivating their mindsets and their behaviors, but I'm building legacy. See, I started off early on with legacy in mind. So I want to have some things. I don't want to just build a legacy and then try to entrust something into some kids who just don't have any discipline, don't
that you
have.
didn't help train along the way.
Yeah, it didn't help train, that they don't have the same values. I mean, we'll get into that, later episodes, but yeah, when you're building legacy, there's a lot more things that are important than just, oh yeah, whatever. If you want to adopt, kids want to act like this or that, no problem. But so for me, we wanted to train and prepare as best we can for situations and things that would come up, because we're training leaders and not followers. So I would use situations that they were involved in to make sure that they were starting to build confidence. They were starting to build their own sense of leadership. And so I would talk to Madison. I said, okay, now you got these friends. You're good now. Now they want to spend the night over people's house. So we're like, okay. I said, so here's what's going to happen. I'm just telling you. Here's what's going to happen. You're some of the kids are going to want to do stuff. I don't know what that entails. They may want to sneak out or something at night, and we're just prepping that you don't have to follow them. You're away from us now. You're going to experience making your own life choices, your decisions, and you're going to have to experience what that feels like, because to be the one to stand up to the crowd is not an easy thing to do. There's an emotion involved in that, and which is why a lot of people end up following the crowd to their detriment sometimes, not to their benefit,
Mhm.
because everybody else is doing it. And I don't want to, have people make fun of me, or I don't want to be the oddball. And so there's this peer pressure. We talk about peer pressure and what happens in peer pressure, and not how we don't need to submit to peer pressure. We need to stand firm in who we are, and we need to stand firm in what we want to do. And so this is, I tell her this is about leadership. So, we're just prepping, and you're going to experience this. And I'll never forget one night. Madison went and spent the night, and she came back with this story.
I can still remember, like, so that was the first moment I experienced peer pressure. And I think that's why it was so huge of a conversation and sticks out so much in my mind. Because I went over to a sleepover, and there was like 5 or 6 girls there. And one of them was like, hey, we should sneak out. And so it got around the circle. A couple of the other girls were like, yeah, let's sneak out. Yeah, let's sneak out. It got to me, and I was like, well, I don't want to. And so I think actually, like, pretty much all of the girls had said, yeah, like, we'll sneak out. Yeah, let's do it. And so it got to me, like second to last, something like that. And I was like, I don't want to. And so just remembering that feeling of like how hard that is to say that and to actually get over that hump was like huge. And then a couple of the other girls were like, actually, I don't want to either. Or actually, I don't want to either. And so experiencing that was just so huge for me. And then going and talking to my dad, and just him being like just the best hype dad ever, of like, oh yes, you did it, like, good job. And just building that confidence in young Madison, that like, oh my gosh, you did so good, like, you said no, like, how did that feel, like, let's talk about it. Just all of that, it really helped in my middle school, high school years to be able to say no more so than like when more intense things are happening, than not just sneaking out. But I was like, okay, I could be the oddball here. Now I can be the oddball for the rest of my life, and we'll be okay. Like, to experience that and then to understand that you're going to be okay was just such a cool feeling. And I think the biggest thing was knowing, like, at that time, that even if I said no and nobody supported me here, that I still had a parent, I still had a dad at home that was going to support me in this decision. And so even though I might feel alone in this group right now, at least I can go talk about it with my dad, and like, he'll be excited that I said no, and he'll support me and build that confidence. And so if you hadn't prepared me for that situation and hadn't told me that it's okay to say no, like, where was I supposed to get the concept that it was okay to say no?
Right. I mean, at that point, you probably would have been sneaking out with them and thought nothing,
Yeah.
thought nothing of it. And all these other girls who are,
Well, because back to the values, if you don't establish these values, or like what's right or wrong for your household, then and for your kids, then they have no concept of what's right or wrong either.
yeah,
So like, I mean, you do have the Holy Spirit, who in discernment, that does ultimately, like, if somebody says let's sneak out and we're whispering and stuff, like, you shouldn't.
right.
Like, a part
Everybody
of you
has
does.
this internal check.
Yeah.
Whether we call it the Holy Spirit, whether they acknowledge that or not, but there's this internal gut feeling in this check that everybody deals with, that like, oh, that's not right. It's not right to do that. But other people want to push those boundaries. And then other people are like, oh, it's just not right, but they do it anyway because they don't want to be the oddball. They don't want to be made fun of, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
But I think it's important too. You mentioned something. Well, two points on that is, I mean, here, because you stood up and you made a decision, it changed the other people who said yes to now agree. Like, okay, finally it gave them an opportunity to really vote their conscience now at that point.
Right.
Right.
Which then kind of went back to the, okay, we're raising leaders, this why sort of thing. I'm like,
right.
I was a leader in this situation.
Yes.
Like, so, but keep going with your points. To point that out.
Yeah. So she now steps up as the oddball, and she now demonstrates leadership to where now she influenced other people who had already made a decision. She now influenced people to change their decision, because now it was safe for them to vote no. See, so somebody else that they respected, made a decision, and it influenced the other people. And ultimately what happened was
we didn't sneak out.
Nobody snuck out because one leader stepped up and influenced the one person initially started trying to influence the whole group to do something now I want to say bad, push the envelope,
Yeah,
uh, push the boundaries, break the rules, whatever you
Right.
want to say, disobey rules, do something that everybody else knew they shouldn't be doing, influenced all the other ones until it got to one who then changed the influence, and then nobody ended up sneaking out. I mean, that's a huge life lesson. And at that point, to experience that early on in a young grade school environment and setting was pretty huge.
And just, I mean, gosh, like peer pressure is hard, and it gets, every stage comes with a new peer pressure and a tougher peer pressure to overcome. And so it's never really like you overcome this peer pressure,
Right.
because every stage as you grow, so does the peer pressure. But if you can just like remember all the times you did say no. And so that's also a key thing, is we kept talking about this moment. Like throughout high school, these things you were like, remember that one time you did say no though, and you stood up and this changed the influence.
Right.
And I was like, oh yeah, I have said no before. Like I can say no again. Like just all these kinds of things.
Yeah.
Like, but yeah,
Well, we also talk about the emotion behind it. Like, okay, you
right,
felt the emotion, right? You felt the pressure. Yeah. So that's what we want to talk about, with our kids. You're going to feel this stress, you're going to feel this pressure, but here's how you overcome it. If we don't help them learn how to overcome it, then and obviously, I mean, as parents, we have to have overcome those situations too. I couldn't speak about that if I hadn't overcome.
right,
See, so I have to have overcome that same thing. How can I teach her something if I didn't overcome that same something?
right.
See, so
How could you describe the feeling of overcoming if you
right,
had never overcome,
right,
or the greatness that's on the other side?
correct.
Yeah.
So,
And ultimately, what I love too about this whole training age group, now that we talk about it more, is just that the choice lies in the kids' hands ultimately. Like your philosophy of training leaders um, means that we get to choose if we're the leaders. Like the kid still has to choose and respond, parents.
right,
So, I mean, if your kid doesn't choose or respond, you're not a bad parent. You're not a
right,
failure. Like they still have to respond.
right,
And so you can talk about peer pressure, and you can talk and prepare them for the next things. And if they don't respond, I mean, you're trying your best here.
right,
So they still have to respond. And that's what I appreciate. Like even now and today, you always, if somebody compliments me or compliments one of your kids, you're like, well, they responded. And so,
yeah. A lot of people would come up to me like, man, you raised your kids you did a good job raising Madison. And I said, well, thank you very much. I did my part, but Madison responded very well. So she did her part too. So it was a team effort. So it wasn't all on me. I'm not taking all the credit. Madison had a lot to do with it. She responded and she stepped up to the plate and she did very well. And that also builds confidence, especially if that's, I mean, because Madison a lot of times is sitting there listening to the parents tell me that, oh, you did a great job raising Madison. If I take all the credit, then Madison would be like, wait, I mean, I have nothing to do with this,
right.
especially at this age, I mean,
It's kind of like in a business, like how you guys feel when
right.
Somebody compliments the boss and like, wow, this project just turned out incredible, or this, and they just don't compliment any of the other people
any of the
involved.
other
They're
people.
like, thank you, I really just did incredible.
Right.
And they just pat themselves on the back, and you're like, okay, well, it just doesn't make you feel good.
Right.
And so yeah, that over time, if I had heard that over and over again, it might have created a bit of a distrust or something. But I wanted to go back to, you just said something there as well. Um, Gosh, I lost it with my last thought, but
well, let me add a thought and then maybe
yeah,
this will catch it up, because I
okay,
had one more thought. And
yeah,
you had mentioned that even if you, in the peer pressure moment, you had this thought that even if nobody else did anything, you knew that you could come home to your dad that had your back.
yeah,
And I tell you that that is a huge thing, because there's been other situations where I had to make some tough choices and confront even family members who I had to take Madison's side and show her that I have her back. Even,
Mm.
she knew that when it went to school, that she could confront the teachers, and that something happened, they would always, I would always have her back.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so there's been, we're not going to necessarily get into that, but I'm just telling you, the trust level through this age group is critical, parents, that if you can do it properly. And again, I'm not saying this is not a formula. I wish I had a formula. There's no formula, because it doesn't work with everyone. It doesn't work with every child. Every child is different. But and that's where the uniqueness comes in. We got to find where those, it's almost like the personality types, how, or the love languages, how you can develop the love languages with your children and understand them so that they feel loved and appreciated and stuff. So
I think what I was going to point out too is, even if I had made a mistake in that situation and snuck out and did that, or like didn't say no, or didn't stand up, like, I think that was a huge moment. But I think even if I didn't do that, like, you still would have loved me.
oh
Like,
yeah,
like, you still would have, like, had my back in other situations. It wasn't like a one moment peer. We would have still talked about peer pressure. We would
right,
have still talked about these things. Like, I mean, even if I never told you, we would still prepare for the next moment, like the
yeah,
next peer pressure moment. And so, and it was never like this big guilt or like shame, I feel like, that you placed on me.
right. That's good.
And so I think that it's a huge moment to celebrate that we could celebrate that. But and it helped me face peer pressure, like, moving forward. But yeah, even if I didn't, I still would have been there. So I think that's really important in this age range as well,
Yeah,
is this, and they're going to make mistakes.
right. They're
Like,
going to make mistakes, and it's okay. And again, that's part of the training. I
yeah.
mean, in training, I mean, there you learn from making mistakes. And so at this age group, I mean, yeah, they're going to make mistakes, but the mistakes aren't so critical at this age. So it's a great training ground where you can, allow some freedoms and allow them to make their own choices. And if they make the choice that you don't agree with, well, that's okay. Let's build from it. We still could have talked about, well, tell me about the emotion of it that led up. Did you feel this emotion? I was all about, the mindset and the emotion, behind these choices and these decisions, and helping them understand, those things that they were feeling and experiencing, because they're going to experience that for the rest of their life.
Well, and because the emotion is the strongest factor in the heat of the moment.
Right.
Like, in the heat of the moment of peer pressure or anything like that, like, it's the anxiety of saying no, or like, what if they don't like me? What if I don't have any friends after this? Or just all those thoughts and emotions. And so the fact that we could prep on that, and then debrief, for
Right.
lack of a better word,
Right.
on that at the end, was really important. Um, but I think another thing that was huge in this, like, age range is you're introduced to all these new people, like all these people who have maybe different toys than you and are getting all this, and comparison starts to become a big factor as well. Um, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah. Again, every family is different. Everybody. I think I want to preface that, maybe, into a comment that I made in the last episode, is that a lot of times parenting, now their parents, the parenting ideologies start to come from their past experience as a child. And if they felt deprived, or if they're not, for lack of better words, a whole person, if they don't have a foundation within themselves, then they're going to try to please their child. They're going to not want their child to hate them. They're going to not want their child to not like them. and so they might give them things, and just because. And I mean, over buy toy. I mean, these family has every toy in the world, and but it didn't do nothing for the relationship. It's kind of like the was the song "Can't Buy Me Love," and I mean, it's just gifts and toys and all this stuff is not, in my opinion, is not what they're looking for. They're not looking for an overwhelming.
Well, and if you think about it too, like those toys go away.
Yeah,
They have new likes eventually. The clothes, all you have to buy new ones eventually. Like the TV system, there's always a new TV gaming system, all of these things.
right.
Those things all pass. And so when your kid is older and you can no longer like buy them toys for excitement or love, like what's still there as a foundation? What's still there connecting you guys? That's not just money. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, and that, I mean, that's all about the relationship that we're building. I mean, you come home, and I mean, here's an 8-year-old that has a phone. Like, I'm not buying my 8-year-old a phone. What do they need a phone for?
Yeah. I
I
think
mean,
that was probably a topic of like once you get into grade schools
yeah,
and
well, I
stuff
want a
like
phone.
that,
Well,
it's the name brand things that start coming up.
yeah,
Like the things where I'm like, I need the name brand jeans. I need
right.
the Miss Me jeans that are $200 a piece or something. And you're like, no, like
Yeah,
regular
no, we're
jeans are
not.
fine. You see, what I don't realize as a kid is that you understand the concept that these things will pass. And so like,
Well, and I'm not. Yeah,
and you're also like providing, and you've got all of these things that are going through your mind and doing these things, and you're not trying to please me. You're not trying to make me love you.
well, and I'm not
Just
not even just pleasing you. Like, I'm not bothered that I don't have the name brand thing.
right.
I don't. I'm not going to allow society to peer pressure me into their economic games that, they use peer pressure all the time for their products and brand awareness stuff, and I don't buy it. I'm not peer pressured into that, and so I'm gonna teach them. Like, I don't care if this parent, what they think about me. They don't know who I am. Although they didn't buy their kid now they buy their kid the designer jeans. Okay, and now what is it? I mean, that doesn't, I don't care. I mean, you want to look a certain way towards me as a parent because I didn't buy my kid a jeans or whatever. So I'm trying to cast that same peer pressure. The same thing I'm trying to teach my kids is now showing up in a pair of jeans. Right. And
Right.
so now it's the life lessons. And now there's no different. I mean, we're not going to fall into that peer pressure and this, oh, they have name brand clothes and we don't type of thing. They're rich, we're poor. No, that's not what that means. We got to get beyond that. So I'm not just going to go buy jeans because everybody else in the school has a pair of jeans.
Well, you make a really good point right here too, as like, so as the parent, you are leading by example, not just by what you say. So like with this whole keeping up with the Joneses, the peer pressure to fit into society, like that sort of thing. So we're talking about peer pressure over here at the same time where you're having to say no to peer pressure.
Right.
Because you've already overcome it, you can teach me. But if you were falling into peer pressure and you were doing things, buying iPhones just because everybody has an iPhone, buying like this house just because this or this car or whatever, like what is that teaching your kids though? If you're talking to them about peer pressure over here, but falling into peer pressure over here.
Well, and that's, I mean, now we're starting about, we haven't really touched about on this. We'll probably, for time's sake, we'll cover this in the next episode about consequences.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
and rewards
rewards and consequences. And so now if your son, daughter comes home and they want this new thing or this pair of jeans or this new phone, and you always are giving it to them, what does that teach them? Because that's not life. Society does not reward every desire and want that we have. That's just not life. We're not preparing them for the next phase in life. You just give them whatever they want. Well, sorry, when I grew up, that was called a spoiled brat. Now we're raising spoiled brats to get whatever they want. When they don't, they give you an attitude. And so now to avoid the attitude, you just keep giving to them. Do you see what you're creating? So no, there's a time where, and even, it's just the value of no, we're not getting that. I'm not following for the peer pressure. Number two, you just need to know that we're not getting it. And you need to know that you're not going to get everything that you want and everything that society tells you you're supposed to have. And just because Johnny and Susie at school have it and you think you want it, or otherwise you're not going to fit in, sorry, we're going to have to deal with that emotion.
Yeah. I didn't even realize until you said it right now, just like the reason behind that of like, life doesn't just give you what you want.
Right.
Like a lot of times you have to earn what you get in life. Like, not saying that you made us earn everything that we got, but pretty early on started talking about earning and provided a safe environment where we'll probably get into it a little more in the next episode, but like provided a safe environment where I could make money with you.
Right.
And how I spent that money. We talked about it. Like, we talked about savings. We talked about, oh, do you really want this item, and just the value of that item and what that looks like, and just all those factors too. Like
Right.
That started to come into place too. And as far as consequences and rewards too, I remember US rewarding us for like grades, or like for if we did something behavior wise, or just anything that was like really good, and you would reward us. You would give us money for like getting good grades, or but with grades, we're gonna have to get into that too as well, because your philosophy wasn't just an A. It
Right.
was what was your personal best. And if you felt like our personal best was a C and we were consistently getting a C, you were proud of us. That would be a reward.
Right.
Like, we would get that. But if you knew we could do better, and we were slacking off or something like that, like if I was consistently getting A's and just consistently doing this, and suddenly I get like a C, and you're like, okay, well, like, let's talk about this. Is it just a tough subject, or is this really your personal best?
Yeah.
So personal best is something we'll have to talk about next episode as well.
Next episode, because now we're getting into the next age group up. So now there's consequences, life lessons, personal best. Next episode is going to be loaded.
Which I'm excited, because I have a lot to say about that age group too.
Yeah.
Because I remember a lot from that age group.
Right.
These last couple, I only have certain things that I remember.
Right.
But yeah, I remember quite a bit about those middle school, high school years, and what I learned through them, and you taught me. So.
And it's important to know as we get into this, to kind of wrap up one final thought on this, is that what we're going to start talking about, Madison's going to share, it's because of the years of relationship building through this age group that now sets up for this next age group. So now what she's going to remember and talk about all happened because of this age group. It didn't just all of a sudden click and all of a sudden there's relationship. That's not how it works. So all this trust and relationship, it took years of effort and working in times of inconvenience to build. I was intentional. Maybe, I was intentional to keep on working on trying to build this relationship with the kids, and to the best of my ability, to the best of what I knew. And it will now show when you hear the next episode and what she'll have to share. A lot of that's a result of this time frame.
So is that the biggest encouragement to parents throughout this age group, is to really focus on the relationship and trust building aspect?
Yeah, I would definitely encourage that. This is the time where they the bond is starting to form, and they need that safety, they need that security, and this is the age that they start to now consciously realize, does mom and dad have my back? Or am I going to be battling? Am I trying to push the envelope with mom and dad all the time? Do I respect them? These are the things that they're starting to process and analyze, and it's going to start showing.
I would also say, for like me as an encouragement to parents in this age group, like, make sure your actions match your words, because that's where the trust comes in. Like, your kids are constantly watching you, but like, there's a couple key moments within this age that if you didn't stand up for me or didn't have my back, like, your actions weren't matching your words then. Like,
Right.
and so that's where the trust is built when you're consistently who you say you are, parents. Like, that's where the relationship and trust is built throughout this age group.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of nights of just listening, just sitting and listen, answer questions, let them cry. There's just it's a lot of
Whatever they need to do.
yeah, just being there. They know you're there.
Yeah.
And that's the security.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you all for tuning in. I hope you guys got a lot out of this and learned some stuff. And please tune in next time. It's going to be a really good one on our next episode.
Thanks so much for joining us today on the Legacy Builders podcast. We would love to hear from all of you. Go tag us on Facebook and Instagram and let us know what the biggest takeaway from today's episode was.